every level you go up in seriousness, you're dealing with a more serious person. He might be angry, probably is dealing with a rough situation in his life. At the pro level, it's money for his family. If you're not, as they say, about that life, you need to step off and go do something else, because you're gonna find out real quickly and in a very negative, sometimes permanently altering way, that you're not that serious and they are, and that's how it's gonna be.
Ed, we've known each other on the socials for quite a while, but man, we've never connected remotely or in person, which I think we're going to do later this year. But man, I'm glad to have you on the podcast today.
I'm really happy to be here. I was thinking about like my first interaction with you when I got on Twitter. You probably don't remember this, but I had figured out the whole Twitter thing, and I think it's because I write well and have a post for what brings people in. And I was like, hey man, do you need any help promoting the podcast across Twitter? And that was before I really understood what the podcast was. Now I would never offer that to not just to your podcast, but anyone, because they're two different kinds of audiences. But yeah, I sent you a message, and I was like, man, this guy's got some really cool guests and all that. And then I was like, I think.
Was I decent? At least with my response?
Yeah.
What happened?
You were
Okay,
polite.
good.
You know what's cool? Now, granted, people change how they respond to people based on who responds, but also a lot of it is how you send the message. And I always make sure I'm as polite as one can be without any formal professional training at the thing. And so I never enter someone's DMs in the old spammy way. That stuff really pisses me off, man. Guys who didn't do any research whatsoever, and they always say something completely off brand. I'm like, did you even look at who you're messaging? Guys who pitch me websites, and I'm like, I have one of those, but
Well, I'm glad you didn't say you slid into my DMs or anything like that. But man, it's been a long time since we've known each other, and I'm really glad that we can connect and talk about your work, because I've been inspired. I think I actually found you through Jordan Harbinger.
That makes perfect sense.
I think he did his podcast when it was Art of Charm years and years ago, is how I initially came across your work.
Funny story about that podcast. So I believe I was, if not the first, then the second guest, because he made a big deal about it when he was doing his pre-interview, that he was changing over to the Jordan Harbinger show and leaving the Art of Charm guys behind. And
got it. Yeah.
And someone, there's the power of just always being a solid dude and presenting yourself the right way. Someone who just is a big fan of the show just kept petitioning. Not like an influencer or anyone. In fact, I know the woman. She's got 4 kids that I know 2 of them pretty well. Just kept petitioning, and finally he gave me a chance. And then we did the interview on my birthday. And my birthday, this is key to the story. My birthday's in the middle of February, and I live in the Northeast. And that means the weather is it'll be cold, but you're not really worried about storms or anything like that. In the middle of the interview, don't you know, a freak thunderstorm happens, knocks the power out. And I'm like, what is this? It is February. But fortunately it was short lived, and we were able to continue the interview. But no issues. But that always stands out in my head. I remember the exact day of the interview, and because of how it went down and what happened.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty wild how all of us are connected, because Jordan was a very early influence of mine. In fact, I went on his podcast. The first time I ever interviewed with him, he said, "This is going nowhere. Come back when you're better at this." And I said, okay. And he told me to write a book and get better at my business and my craft, and I did. I wrote a book and got better, and ended up being able to join him. But yeah, he's one of my early mentors, man. He's pretty incredible for sure.
Yeah, all of you guys have something really special, and it's something that I want. And just being real here, I've got the book coming out, and writing that book. And the book writing, from idea to when it'll finally come out next week, that is it's a 2.5 year process. So that gives you a lot of time to reflect and think on things. And I was just where does Ed Latimore go from here? Because the way I've really built up the influence and how people are even aware of me is telling my story and teaching from it and my perspectives. But the way I was making money was helping people with social media growth and things like that. And I said, I really want to be more like you guys, where everything is completely aligned. And your podcast reflects your book, and your book reflects how you show up and what you put out. And so I want to make sure everything is like that. So you guys really inspire me and how I'm going to go forward with kind of the we'll say the business brand of Ed Latimore in the future, because I look at everyone and I go, if these guys can do it and they're great at it, I should be able to do it. I don't have like a weird story or nothing like that. Or
no, you do though. You have a pretty unique story. I mean, from you to go through some early childhood challenge, like a lot of us have, to varying degrees, to becoming a heavyweight boxer, to putting your stuff out there on social media. How many books have you written now? Is this your third or fourth book?
This will be, as I consider, kind of a book length work. This will be the third one.
Third, right? And so that's hard work, man. I don't think a lot of people know how much effort it goes into taking your own personal story, which obviously you're deeply connected with, and then putting it in a format, in a way where people not only resonate with it, but they can learn lessons from it. And that's how you formatted this book is, what are a dozen lessons that people can learn through your challenge and adversity and hardship in life?
Yeah, that's really a great point, because the first book, look, I mean, you can go read it if you want. It's kind of terrible, but it was a proof of concept. It taught me I did one thing really well, which carried the rest of the book, which was I nailed the title. The title got all the attention. And then one of the things you learn, you don't strike me as a rap guy, but there's this rapper, this guy named Logic, and he's got this song, 44 bars. And in the song, he's got this line that's always stuck with me. He says, this week is looking crazy due to high demand, because people in this day and age don't buy music, they buy the brand. And what he's saying is that, his music is okay at best, right? Not at best. Well, I don't want to disrespect Logic or anything like that. He's very talented. But what he understands is that before people buy into the work, they got to buy into you. They got to buy the you and the you behind it. And that's what that book really showed me, because that opened up everything. The second book was about sobriety. This book, though, is the memoir. It is the story of the childhood and how that led to boxing, with boxing being the whole through line, and then how boxing changed the rest of my life and really had me confront a lot of weaknesses that had nothing to do with my physical capabilities. And the way I ended up nailing that, like you said, writing lessons, because, I didn't even realize I was writing a memoir at first. That was a different conversation. But I ended up writing 2 books because I didn't realize I was writing a memoir at first. And then they were like, what the hell is this? When I turned it in, I was like, oh, right. But one of the things I think I nailed is taking and telling the story, and each chapter and subchapter having it be a lesson, and then hitting that lesson, the title of that chapter, the title of that subchapter, with the idea kind of summarized in what you read through and grab from it. And I'm very proud of what I like. At the end of the day, I'm very proud of it. Whether it's a huge commercial success or I don't get any orders except what I got in pre-orders already. It won't faze me as much, because I know I put together a good book. It'll still faze me. I'm not going to sit here and be that guy that's like, sales don't matter. No. They matter. But
yeah. Well, I know you're going to sell books, and I know you're going to impact people. And one of the things that stood out about what you just said to me is that people, buy or don't buy into you. And whether you're trying to sell a book or put your stuff out on social media, what I've realized, even if it's just trying to lead your kids or lead your wife or lead your employees or your clients, they're going to buy into you. And the way that you present yourself and the lessons that you've overcome, the hardships that you've endured, that actually makes you a more dynamic person. And what I found is that everybody likes the underdog. Like we don't don't expect for the people that we follow to be perfect. We expect them actually to be imperfect with the desire and ability to overcome. And that's what you've done. And I wish more people embraced their own personal hardship the way that you have and use those as lessons to teach other people. Was there a specific lesson? I mean, I've got them all here in front of me, and there was one that really stood out to me as you wrote this book, and one that resonated with me most. Let's see here. Where is it? You're only as good as your last win. Or excuse me, you're only as good as your last win. I said at win because I had a coach that used to say, you're only as good as your last at bat. That's what he used to. He's my baseball coach. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, damn, I got to read this chapter because that's exactly what he said. You're only as good as your last win.
Yeah, so that chapter is when I first landed in Los Angeles after I had got. So there's just like the backstory before we get there, because otherwise it won't carry. So I had, started boxing as an amateur. I started as an amateur, which is how you should do it. You don't have to do it that way. But I started as an amateur, worked my way up, really improved, and really made some key adjustments and decisions in my career that took me from there was like a quantum leap in my ability. I went from being in a period of like 4 months, I went from being just like a local level fighter who could not get to the regional or national level to winning the state title and getting to the national level. And when I got to the national level, after winning the Pennsylvania State Golden Gloves in 2011 for my weight class, the first guy I fought was this guy named Dominic Brazil. Anybody in the boxing game knows Dominic Brazil ultimately went on to represent us in the 2012 Olympics. What I didn't know when I got paired with Dominic, the champ of California, what I didn't know was that he was backed by this group, All-American Heavyweights. It doesn't exist anymore, but what they were trying to do is they were trying to pick guys, former Division I athletes, and turn them into heavyweight boxers, because that's, if you're a Division I athlete, at most positions,
athletes in different fields, not just boxing, but all sorts of different sports.
They took them primarily. I actually don't think they had any baseball players, because baseball structure is different. If you're good enough to box, you are at least in a minor league somewhere earning a comparable paycheck. But they were taking them from basketball and football. Okay, so this group, All-American Heavyweights, and a little background on All-American Heavyweights, it was founded and run by Michael King of King Vision. So the guy who if you remember the old Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, Oprah Winfrey, you watch at the beginning, you see King Vision, or I think at the end King Vision come up. That's that Michael King. He was running it. He had backing from the guy, the Adidas founder's son. I can't remember his name. It's from the book I did when I was doing research, and some people who had worked on the Jag show as producers. So he had all this money, and so he was pulling these guys out the sport after they graduated. He's paying for their lodging, their food, their training, all of this stuff, right? Just 1 second, I have to shut down this WhatsApp. Sorry about that. It beeped, and I don't think you heard it, but I heard it. But
I didn't hear it. Nope, I didn't hear it.
But so he's paying for all of this and also getting them fights, because the big deal about amateur boxing is like there's no money. And like a lot of tournaments, even if you're invited, very rarely do they cover plane costs. Golden Gloves is a different organization. So when I went to that tournament, they actually did have money for hotel and our ticket. Anyhow, I drew Dominic and beat Dominic. Dominic's like 6'7". He was in a few NFL camps. He's a decent guy. Fought for the title twice against lost to Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. So he's a good sized dude, and I'm only 6'1". I mean, it's only, but like 6'1" is tiny for a heavyweight. So I go in there, I beat him. I win 2 more fights, and then get knocked out in the semis against this cat Donovan Dennis. And that night, when I'm getting just enjoying finally being out the tournament, they approached me and they asked me if I want to come out there because I beat their guy, and they had no tape.
All-American Heavyweights?
Yeah, they had no tape on me, but I beat their guy. Now, I don't fit any of the requirements because they had a whole open application on the website. And the three criteria, you had to be younger than 25. I was 26. had to be a former D1 athlete. I had played a little D3 football, and you had to be taller than 6'2", 6'1". So I'm like, all right, you guys ain't really that serious. Whatever, you drinking too. But no, they were serious. So I got out there, and I wasn't out there for a week before they were like, all right, we know you beat Dominic, but let's make sure you're the real deal. So they put me in a fight. I can't remember the guy's last name, but I know his first name is Jaboy. That's his real name, Jaboy, Jaboy. And
Jaboy.
and there were a whole bunch of these Samoan cats out there because the Samoan culture, they produce a disproportionately high number of they represent a disproportionately high number of athletes in the NFL compared to their numbers of the population.
Per capita, Samoa has the most NFL athletes of any culture.
Crazy.
Per capita,
I watched some great videos on
right.
this, but it boils down to a culture that simultaneously stresses kind of this masculine development and really pushing yourself, and physical challenges is a core part of that, but also this kind of cooperative discipline that you really need to be coached and work in a team. So I ended up out there, and I fought that guy, and then I fought, I think 2 weeks, maybe not even 2 weeks later, this other guy, Edwin Alvarez, another big 6'7" dude who was a D1 hooper, and I beat both of those guys, and they let me go. And they would not let me go, but they stopped. They were like, "All right, you good? You're here." But that was within 2 weeks of being out there, and I'm still adjusting to the time. I had to get my eyes checked. One of the things that stands out to me because they go and give you a whole physical, make sure you're breathing right, your lungs good, your eyes are awesome, which is something that doesn't normally happen in amateur boxing, again, because money, but they had that. But I remember I'm sitting in the weight room, and my pupils are dilated. I can't see a thing. I can just hear the story. This was the same week that F5 tornado ripped through Joplin, Texas, or Joplin, Missouri, and pretty much wiped it off the map. I just remember they were saying, there was a swath of about 1 mile where even if you were in your tornado shelter, you were still wiped out. But there's little things you remember because of the timing. But that's what I was writing about that chapter. They didn't care that I had beat their guy. I mean, they cared enough to give me a shot, but all that did was get me an audition effectively. You think that's the audition. That ain't the audition. Everything's an audition. The next fight was an audition for the next fight. And then finally they were like, all right, you're good. But I still had to keep fighting and keep winning. I watched a lot of guys come through that program and get cut. Because, one, it takes a very particular type of psychology to box. Especially if you ain't never done it before and you're just looking for a paycheck. Because that's what it was for a lot of guys. They were like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do next. They're going to pay me. I'm here. And it wasn't a crazy amount. I think the guys they were bringing in, they were making $1,200 a month. But they had their food and their rent covered. So it goes a little further. And
it got a foot in the door for some sort of aspirational goal, I'm sure, as well.
And some guys came through who had never boxed before and went on to have pretty decent careers. My buddy Johnny Rice, who actually ended up getting cut but lasted pretty long, he went on to have a pretty good career, upset a few people, and made some decent money. Other guys who had never boxed before, like Dominic Brazil, he goes on to he just got on the Olympic team, which is enough because a lot of people don't realize this, that when you see someone represent their country in the Olympics, yes, they were the best athlete in their country for that particular sport and weight class, but they also had to go and fight in something called a continental tournament or a zonal tournament, depending on your language, which means so to get to an Olympics, the world is broken up into 5 zones. And when you win your country, then you go to the tournament for your zone.
For your zone.
And then you got to place in the top 3 to then earn an Olympic spot. It's not as simple as, okay, you beat the U.S., you go to London. He had to go to Rio and then fight a bunch of guys from, and our division is probably the most competitive, at least for boxing, because you got all of North America and then all of Central and South America. That's how we're broken up, the Americas zone. And then some of the islands as well. That's how that ended up working out. So that was cool. And then Charles Martin was also part of that program. He went on to become the IBF champ and fight. He had some notable fights. He lost the belt to Joshua, and then as he was coming up again, he fought Louis Ortiz, who's the Cuban boogeyman. That's what they called him, the boogeyman. And Louis Ortiz knocked him out. But it was a competitive fight until then. Gave Jared Anderson a pretty good fight too, to decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting to see and hear like what you go through and all of the steps that you had to overcome. But I like that concept of your whatever you're doing now is the audition for the next thing. Because I think if more people took it that seriously, they would think harder about the work that they're doing, from a podcast interview like this, or having a conversation with their wife, or engaging with their kids, or coaching their kids' sports teams. It doesn't matter what you're doing if you think about everything, right? Every aspect of your life.
Everything is a setup for the next thing. And that mentality alone, when you embrace that mentality, that changes your perspective on work in general. Because I think a lot of people look at work as not even a necessary evil, but something to be done as quickly as possible to focus on leisure, whatever that leisure is. But I think people who understand that each step is a setup for the next step, they've accepted implicitly, at least, that the work is continual. It never stops. So yeah, you celebrate your win and you feel good about it, but then you get right back out there after it. I think athletes understand this, if for no other reason than that's how a season is structured. Okay, you go, you play this game, you won that game, great. Season ain't over though. Your career's not over. There's still the next level. There's still the next game. Even on a practical aspect, if you look at a high school athlete, okay, you want to make a team or some type of all team is what I mean. Like, so whether it's all state, all division, all city, whatever, that's going to get you the looks so you can continue to get to college. But now you're a fresh fish again. You're back at square one. Even if you were the top recruit, they got guys ahead of you. They got guys competing for your spot. Okay, let's say you outlast all of them. Are you going to be good enough at your position when the time comes to get to the next level, the professional level? Okay, so you do get drafted, you get picked up. But now you're really now you're with the best of the best, and they're all hungry, and every year somebody's coming in. So are you going to secure your roster spot? Then once you secure your roster spot, are you going to get that starting spot? Are you going to keep that spot? And then are you going to perform at a level well enough or high enough to where they're not going, okay, he's a good role filler, but we're going to bring in somebody else to take his spot? Or are you going to do well enough to get that contract extension, that big, that franchise tag? And if you get that, right, are you just playing for that money? Or are you trying to make a career? You trying to leave a legacy? You trying to be a Hall of Fame kind of deal? It just keeps going and going. And then if you finish that, you win that game, what's the next game? A lot of athletes struggle with that concept too when they leave the sport. What do I do now? What do I do now?
What one of the questions I get asked quite often is, when do you throw in the towel? Like priorities change, seasons of life change, you get beat up, literally and proverbially. But when do you throw in the towel? When is the right time to say, hey, you know what, I've had enough, or I'm done, or I'm ready to move on to something else? Or do you look at it entirely different than the phrase throw in the towel?
So I was just laughing when you said that, because I don't know if you're aware of it, but I came back after 8.5 years, last two weekends ago, to 12, and won a fight by first round knockout. And it was a knockout with a body shot, which is like really impressive. It was always the best, because
rare.
Because you do the most damage acutely, but you leave the guy intact. The mind, his head isn't scrambled. Less entertaining for the crowd most times, but the best outcome for everyone if you have to lose a fight. But
interesting, yeah.
But as far as when one decides to throw in the towel, when one decides to quit, I can give you two kind of stories to give an answer to this. when I was an amateur out there in All American heavyweights, they had an all-star coaching cast. I mean, there was Prentice Bird, the guy, I can't remember his name for the heck of me, and I can see his face, but he worked with Holyfield and Hearns. Those were he was their coach, and John Bray, who's California Hall of Fame dude, brother oddly enough works on movies, and that's a different combo, but it's a fun one. But one of the coaches was Henry Tillman Jr., who won the gold in the '84 Olympics. Fun fact, he beat Tyson in the amateurs, and then Tyson came out and demolished him in one round in the pros. But I was talking to Henry about it, and he said, I asked him, I was like, yo, when did you know when to hang up when you were done? He goes, when I wasn't motivated to go to the gym anymore. And because boxing is one of those sports, you're not, I mean, there are sometimes contractual obligations to a fight. But it's not like they're paying you a bunch up front before you fight. You don't get paid till you fight. So if you decide to dust off, only thing you might owe is any money they kick you as part of a very rare signing bonus, right?
Got it.
So in that aspect, that was an interesting thing to hear. He just said, when I was having trouble getting out of bed to go to the gym, and I know how serious the sport is, I said it's time to go do something else. On the other end of it, when I stopped fighting the first time, and I never fully was out, I say I oscillated between 5 and 95% for most of the 8.5 years I was out. 5% being I ain't never going to even touch a boxing glove again, and 95% probably I was Roy Jones Jr. sparring partner when he was getting ready for the Tyson fight back in, I think that was 2021. And I was like, okay, I could come back and do this.
Yeah.
But before that, I lost the fight, and I fought to a draw, and I took all of 2017 off. I was getting ready to come back. In 2018, I said, let's go for it. Got injured. And my coach said, he's like, yo, you need to step back and look at your life. You don't really need to do this anymore. I had just graduated from college when I went back to college. And I didn't just kind of graduate. I mean, my GPA was okay. It was a 3.1. But in sciences, that's good. It was a physics degree. But we have to take this test called the National Fields Exam to just compare all the physics programs in the country to make sure people, to make sure you're not just phoning it in because and the graduates are being taught the right stuff. And I was the highest score that year and the second highest or third highest in the school's history. And so it was a pretty big honor. And he's like, and I told my coach about it because my coach is my friend too. He's not just my boxing coach, and he was excited about that. And I had just had a really great week on online sales as well. It was 2 back-to-back $20,000 weeks in affiliate stuff, not even my own products. And so he's like, look at everything you're doing and where you're at now. You don't really need to do this anymore. I'll coach you if you want to, but I also want to see you escape with all your faculties. You're an intelligent guy. You don't need to do this. And I was tutoring kids in Calc too to make money. And so for me, I had weighed it out. I was like, well, he's not wrong. And there's a lot of stuff I want to do that I can't do while I'm boxing. For example,
sure.
I was living in Portugal for a little while, for 6 months. I couldn't do that if I was fighting. And I've always wanted, I never lived across, out the country. And been to a bunch of places now. Couldn't do that kind of travel. And I don't even drink or eat like an asshole or anything like that. I just wouldn't be able to put the time into the gym. So I said, okay, I want to go do other stuff. Now that's a rarer case where guys are like, there are other things I want to do in my life. But I know that, notable guys I can think of in other sports. I'm pretty sure that in football, I think Rashard Mendenhall, the running back that was here for Pitt, I think he did something like that because he ended up going on to be one of the key writers for the Baller show that was on HBO with the Rain.
Oh, really?
Rock.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a key writer on that. And then I don't want to get his name wrong, but he was a linebacker. I want to say Damani Jones, maybe something like that. The Healy Jones. he went off and did the same thing. There are a lot of guys that it's a rare type because of how much energy you invest into the sport and how much it becomes your identity. To go, you know what?
Well, and you start so young in some of these sports. I mean, these kids, I don't know when you started boxing, but a lot of these guys, they're at 5-6 years old. They're playing their sport up until their mid-20s, mid-30s. Before so they're 3 decades into it.
Yeah, it's I started when I was 22, ancient, for the sport.
Yeah, for boxing. Yeah,
and,
sure.
And so that gives me a perspective that a lot of guys who come in the sport don't have. And I always try and give it to them too. I tell guys all the time, I say, look, if you want to do this for external accolades, like the 2 big reasons I hear, I'm going to be able to make some money or get some girls. I'm like, look, man, first, ain't no money in this. It ain't like the other sports. You're going to be paying to fight most of the time. Not all the time, but effectively, when you factor in tests and travel and gear, you're gonna be in the red, man. Like it's not, and you're gonna be mad too. Like where all this money I was promised, it's not probably you're probably not gonna get it. It exists, but you're probably not gonna get it. And then as far as the girls go, I tell guys, look, you'll be in shape, and that will help. But wait till you realize that you can't go out and party because most of the fights are on the weekend. And so you need to be clear-minded, sober, and focused. And even if let's pretend that you don't fight that weekend, you still got to be in the gym constantly. And any girl that's going to put up with that is a special one that you don't even want to put in that category anyway of someone casual. There's a funny story about the girl thing. There was a guy that came to the gym. I remember his name clearly. I won't say it because your podcast is pretty big. But if he hears it, don't know the story. He came to the gym and he won his first non-amateur fights. Some of them by stoppage too, and that's really impressive. A stoppage in the amateurs because it's softer gloves. There's headgear and different rules. On the 10th fight, I wasn't fighting on the card. I just was there showing support in the back with guys while they're wrapping their hands, still amateur. And he says to me, he goes, Ed, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I invited 3 different girls to come see me fight, and they're all going to want to kick it afterwards. And all I said to him, I was like, hey, man, why don't you just worry about the fight first?
That'd be the first step.
And you'll figure it out. He goes out there and he gets stopped in the 3rd round, like folded over. It was a body shot, accumulation, because in the 3rd round, he just folded over and the ref waved it off. So he didn't have to worry about that. He said, I'm going to take some time off from the gym. Let me take a week off and recover. Week passes, I'm in the gym working out with my trainer, and I go, what happened to so-and-so? And he says, he sent me a message, man. He said this boxing thing is just not for him. This is a guy with 9 wins. Won his first 9 fights.
Yeah, solid, right?
Took that shot and said, So if you're going to do this, you got to understand the type of people who are going to do this. And I think that's what anything serious. I'm just speaking from my experience from boxing. Every level you go up in seriousness, you're dealing with a more serious person. Now, in some sports where you don't hurt people, at least not intentionally, and there's a real penalty for doing it outside of the confines of the game, that doesn't mean that much. That just means they're going to put more time in, they're going to put more effort in, they're going to sweat more than you. But in something like boxing, that means, this guy quite literally, for whatever the situation is, he might be angry. He probably is dealing with a rough situation in his life. At the pro level, it's money for his family. If you're not, as they say, about that life, you need to step off and go do something else. Because you're going to find out real quickly, and in a very negative, sometimes permanently altering way, that you're not that serious, and they are, and that's how it's going to be.
It is interesting when you look at. Admittedly, I don't follow boxing as much as I do MMA, but I look at it from the sidelines, and it's hard for me to wrap my head around somebody who wants to pursue a career getting in fights. Now, I know it's not as barbaric as a lot of people think it is. I think there's a lot of discipline and mental toughness and clarity and drive and determination because I've been around it long enough where I see that and I've talked with enough people. But that is what it is. It's combat. It's a martial art, and it's interesting to me.
Look, I am convinced that there is something fundamentally wrong with anyone who fights full time, myself included. Now the degree of that differs, sure. But sure. everyone is dealing with some trauma. That's why in the book I start the book with about the story of my childhood, and then the point I make and kind of the note before that is I quote Howard Adonis. Howard Adonis was he was like I guess I don't know what the word is for this position. Maybe the CEO or the leader of USA Boxing. USA Boxing runs all the amateur boxing in America, and they answer to AIBA. Which is the international body, and they're the domestic ministers. And he said, whenever a kid says they want to box, I ask them, did your parents beat you? And if the answer is no, I say this probably ain't for you. And because look, you're right. Most people, they do everything they can to avoid a physical confrontation. As they should, because even in the confines of the ring with rules and everything, I know a guy that had to retire at 15-0 because he got a detached retina that couldn't be fixed the right way. So he didn't even lose. You go in there and you're taking all these risks to your body. But think about the type of person that does this voluntarily. And I'm not talking about the street bullies who are looking to beat up on people or try and rob somebody, so there's like a gain for it. No, it's like going against other trained guys.
Professionals. You're fighting trained people.
Who know how to hurt, who are coming in there to hurt you, and you got to go in there and try and hurt them. And yeah, you're right. There is a lot of skill, it's a lot of discipline. They call it the sweet science for a reason. There's a real skill aspect there to it. But it's like, what else is a skill game? Chess is a skill game. But imagine if every time you got a piece taken, you got decked across your chin. You got a chin check every time you got put in check. That's kind of like...
get a little bit more serious.
Yeah, you'd play the game a little differently. It would still be a skill game, but there's a chance you lose your consciousness in the middle of it. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with somebody who decides that this is what they want to do. When they could do, because look, you got the athleticism of box. And to be fair, we have seen this shift. That's one of the reasons why the heavyweight boxing in America has declined, because the big four just pay more. The big four being basketball, baseball, football, and depending on your socioeconomic bracket, hockey. Right? Hockey's not really what they play in the hood, but if you got the speed and strength to do hockey, you'll do hockey. Sure. I coached a kid who's, on the side, he did hockey. Or rather, he did boxing on the side, because hockey, I didn't know this, man, youth hockey is as demanding and costs more than youth like baseball. Didn't know that, found that out.
I think lacrosse is probably gonna. It's not on there now.
Lacrosse too.
Lacrosse is gonna take over.
Like there are just so many more benefits. Even if you never make a dime, there's at least a college education that comes out of it. And now with the NIL deals, there's even more money to be. There's money to be made even if you don't make a dime going to the pros. So outside of the heavyweight division, a lot of guys, if they end up boxing and they're not Mexican, because the Mexican culture is different, they've chosen this for whatever reason, which means they got likely some issue that keeps them out the game. That could be but not always as grades. Could be just not being able to play well with others too. Seen that in team sports. And so they're there and they like it. they're not being forced to go. They like it.
They like doing it.
They're excited. Them guys, the worst guy to fight is a guy that likes banging. He ain't in there to skill you out. He has some skill, but he's in there to make it rough and nasty. And he's like, we're going to see how nasty you want to make it. And most guys ain't for that. There are a lot of guys that have made their career being that dude. And that comes obviously that comes with the lasting damage, but think about the damage you have to want to do that in the first place. And I'm not talking about like mental damage that would affect your cognition or reasoning abilities, but the emotional, the psychological damage where you said, you know what I like to do? Hurt people and get hurt. This is cool.
Are there, in spite of that, are there days where you regret being done? Are there days where you're like, maybe I could go back in some capacity?
Well,
and because I know you've got a lot of great things going on outside of the world of boxing, but I imagine there's some days where you think, man, that was my life. That was something I really enjoyed and I was good at.
Well, I'm gonna just be real, and every athlete has different perspectives here. I'll be real. I absolutely hated training. Okay, that's too strong. I didn't like it as much as one might think. But one of the things that was very different coming around this time, and I'll try and not get too far into the weeds here. I had spent a lot of time understanding the biomechanics of what makes a fighter good. It started as like, when I started coaching, I wanted to make sure everything that I taught stood up in the boxing court of law, right? But newsflash, there's no such thing. Boxing is a bit in the Stone Age when it comes to training practices and consolidating what works and what doesn't work, and that's because there's no selection pressure. Like you can't have a bad idea if you're a college football coach, because you won't get a second chance to have a bad idea or a second season. So peace.
Makes sense.
But in boxing, okay, you lost, we'll polish it, work it up. Guys coming to the sport, I've seen guys literally throw a towel over their shoulder and declare themselves a coach. They never fought. It's that kind of madhouse. But I wanted to, but that ain't how I work. That's not how I think. So I spent a lot of time studying this stuff. My old coach called me up and asked if I contribute to a video to explain why you don't twist your foot on the hook, because it's got to do with biomechanics. So I had to go dig into biomechanics to the point like this thing is on my porch. Fundamentals of biomechanics and sports exercise. This is not a thin or inexpensive book.
Or interesting one from where I sit.
Yeah, but I made sure I understood this stuff really well, and then I started predicting fights people thought would be close, and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I see it differently."
Interesting.
And I was right, and so now I have this whole framework to go train and go do things. So coming back for this fight, I was just happy. I was happy. I was having fun because I was able to move past a limit that I had before, because I couldn't figure it out. My coach understands the art of it better than anyone. The science, not so much. I brought my scientific training on in my mind, because that book has got a lot of physics too, as it should. And I can understand and work with that and then apply it to my body. And I had a lot of fun. I don't think I've never been able to stop a guy with a body shot, but I had the right mechanics and understanding of what to do. I have a weight training routine now that goes along with it to train the right muscles the right way, and I know what I'm doing. So I'm having a lot of fun. So to answer the initial question, do I ever miss it? And I don't. That's not why I started fighting again, because I missed it. There were a whole bunch of other reasons, and that's one of the reasons, is because, okay, I see this gap in skill that I had that most people don't even understand. They don't think of the sport this way. I started thinking of the sport this way, applying it with my training, with my background, with my I guess we'll call it knowledge set, and saw results. And I plan to continue to fight. The only difference is I'm not going to be a heavyweight anymore. I wasn't supposed to be a heavyweight for this fight, but the way it worked out, whatever. Ended up fighting the heaviest guy I'd ever fought. Big Mexican dude who just, you go into situations. He's fighting because he need that money. He hit me with a good shot, and I was like, that's why I'm not a heavyweight. But I was well, I don't want to be a heavyweight anymore. But then I came back and stopped him. But I have a lot of fun now. I wasn't having a lot of fun before. I felt like I was driving a car with a brake on it. And now I took the brake off and I can see what I'm doing. I'm not just have fun. The only reason why I'm not in the gym since the fight is that I'm working on a lot of stuff to go into the book launch. But once that's all handled and some of the speaking things that I have lined up for it are taken care of, I'll be back in there, and we're actually planning to be back in there in February. I got an offer for a fight in November, and I said that ain't possible. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
Between everything with the book and then the wife has been very patient with everything with the book, but her career is travel. She's a travel agent. She's like, we need to get back to Europe, and I'm like, I don't really want to fly with a baby. But we're gonna do it because now he can focus on stuff, which is incredible. But I'll be gone most of October, so November wasn't gonna happen. But I'll be able to get in there for February.
Yeah, sure.
And it'll be a good time.
Well, and you talk about I think one of the chapters in the book is about old endings equal new beginnings.
Yep.
And I wish more people took that to heart. You said it earlier, when people get wrapped up in their identity of who they were, when that chapter ends, whether it's fighting or military service or fill in the blank, a lot of men lose their identity and they can't figure out a way to move forward in their life in a better way than maybe even it was before, because they're so wrapped up in the old version of themselves.
Yeah, you have you don't have all the time. Obviously, you're gonna die. God willing, that'll be a long time from now. No matter what your age is, whether that's 80 or 80, it's hopefully a long time from now. But if you start living like you're dead, you don't have it. There's no spark. There ain't nothing to keep you going. Nothing to make you alive and awake. What's the point? So you got to make sure you got to be curious about the world, I guess. And I think that's what happens with guys who can't shift their identity. They got hyper focused on something, and they never let themselves get curious, explore their curiosity. Sometimes it's like, I hear this a lot, whether it's in sports or other endeavors. It's like starting over from scratch in something new and being a complete beginner, which to me is like one of the best feelings in the world. You get to learn something new, get to see, how do my other skills help me here? Do they not help me here? Do I have an affinity for it? Am I bad at it? Who knows? But there's that curiosity that comes with, that I think is necessary to be able to shift identities, to do something else. Because look, like if Ed Latimore wake up tomorrow and his legs don't work, that's it. My legs are done. Well, I'm never going to box again. What am I going to do now? I got to figure out a way. But I'm not going to give up. I wake up, my hands and my arms are gone, or my eyesight's gone. I was watching the interview before we got on. I didn't catch his name, but the guy who was an EOD over.
Yeah, Aaron Hale.
Yeah, and I'm like, look what this guy does. You got to have a certain way of seeing the world, and I think if I could put a nice bow on the whole idea, you got to realize there's more than you'll ever have time to do. So you should never run out of things to do. You have imperfections in your body and in your soul and in your mind. You can go work on those. You have gaps in knowledge about anything. What do you want to learn about? What do you want to do? What do you want to see? Even if you can't get to a place you want to see, there's a new problem to work on. How do I make sure how do I figure out how to see this place? There's so much to do. You just got to be willing to go, okay, what's the next step, and be curious about the next step. If you're not curious, if you let yourself feel sorry for yourself, you're stuck.
Yeah. Well, Ed, how do we connect with you, man? Obviously, the book is out as of the release of this podcast, so I want guys to pick up a copy of the book. How do they connect with you outside of picking up a copy?
Make sure you drop that link in the show notes. But
we will put all those links in there. But these guys need to support you in your work.
How do you
sure.
connect with me? I feel bad if anybody born with my name afterwards because I'm Ed Latimore everywhere. I'm Ed Latimore on Twitter, Ed Latimore on Instagram, Ed Latimore on LinkedIn, Ed Latimore on YouTube. Ed Latimore is my website handle or my website URL, edlatimore.com. So you can connect with me anytime. And I swear, man, a lot of guys say this, but I live it. I leave my DMs open for better or worse, mostly better, but lately with these changes, it's been kind of bad with a lot of this spam. But you send me a message, and I swear, I respond to everything and talk to everyone because I'm super grateful that, I even get a chance to sit here and talk to you. I'm blessed that you let me on your platform. I don't take that lightly either. And so I make sure I try and give back any way I can.
Awesome, man. Well, I am too. I'm glad that you came on, and we'll make sure, obviously, we sync everything up so the guys know exactly where to turn and find out more about what you got going on. And as you're doing your work up to your fight, man, if you want to come back on, or if we can support you and the community can support you, the order in some way, whether that's promotion or buying tickets or whatever we can do, supporting you in some way, we're all about it. So you just let us know and we'll make that happen.
Hey, I really appreciate that, man. One of the hard things for somebody like me, who really, and you guys will see it in the book, this is not just a random plug for the book, but one of the hard things for a person like me that this whole process has really helped me to work through is you end up really embodying the idea of no one is coming to save you. And that's a good idea to work with. What a lot of people don't tell you is that what comes downstream of that is if you don't temper that, you end up not being willing to connect with people because you don't think anyone can help you or can save you in any type of way. And so you become a lone wolf, and you can do a lot. You become really self-sufficient. But this whole life thing is a team sport. I really believe that the other people are the most important thing. And so just hearing that, man, that means a lot. Whether I ever take up that offer is a different story, but hearing it is good for my heart, man.
Yeah. That's interesting. I hear what you're saying. I never quite heard it explained like that because you do hear that. Nobody's coming to save you. And I think in theory, that's a good concept because it puts the weight of responsibility where it belongs on your shoulders. But then you close yourself off to accepting help, accepting feedback, partnering with other people, shoring up weaknesses through what a team can provide. That's interesting, man. That's a great lesson right there.
Man, I'm so grateful for my wife, man. Look. She's been very patient with me over the years. I 12 years, I'm no longer like a mangy dog. You kind of bring it. How you get a stray dog and like it wants love, but you try and feed it and it bites at you because it ain't used to people feeding it without strings attached. I'm no longer that dog, but I've been that dog for a while. And in this online space, in this business space, you can't be that dog either. You got to be more like a wolf, which is you'll throw teeth if it's necessary, but you work together in a pack.
Well, she sounds like a great woman, man, and I know you're a great man, and I'm excited that we get to put this conversation out to the world. I appreciate you, brother.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. Thank you.